My name is Eleanor, and at 67, I just buried Richard Blackwood, my husband of 40 years and the love of my life. Together, we built a real estate empire from nothing, property by property, deal by deal. His heart finally gave out yesterday after years of declining health. I knew this day would come, but nothing prepares you for the emptiness. What nobody knows, not even my son Michael or his wife Amanda, is that Richard left me $38 million and a skyscraper in Manhattan under my name alone. I kept silent as I watched Amanda take over our home within hours of his passing. That night, her true colors showed when she screamed, "Pack your bags, the old leech doesn't stay here." All I said was, "Okay." If you're watching this, let me know where you're from in the comments below, and hit subscribe to hear what I decided to do that changed everything. I still remember the day I met Richard Blackwood. It was 1974, and I was 20 years old, working as a secretary at Wilson Real Estate, a small firm in downtown Brooklyn. My family had always struggled financially, and this job was my ticket to independence. Richard was 25, then a junior agent with big dreams and an even bigger smile. He walked past my desk every morning, always stopping to chat despite his busy schedule. "Morning, Eleanor. Beautiful day to sell some properties, isn't it?" he would say, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners. I would smile back, my heart beating a little faster each time. We started having lunch together, Richard sharing his visions of building communities, not just selling houses. "Real estate isn't just about buildings, Eleanor," he would say, sketching ideas on napkins. "It's about creating spaces where life happens." 3 months later, he asked me on a proper date. 6 months after that, we were planning our future together. His family, the established Blackwoods, with generations in banking, were less than thrilled about their son dating a secretary from a working-class background. His mother actually suggested I was after their family name and connections. "My son could marry into any family in New York," she told me during an uncomfortable tea meeting. "What exactly do you bring to the table, Eleanor?" Richard stood by me, unwavering. "Eleanor doesn't need to bring anything to the table," he told his mother firmly. "She is the table. She's the foundation I want to build my life on." We married in 1976, a small ceremony with mostly my family and Richard's closest friends. Only his younger sister represented the Blackwoods, but we didn't need their approval or their money. Richard had saved enough for a down payment on our first investment property, a run-down fourplex in Queens. "This is the start," Richard said as we stood in the dilapidated building holding hands. "Blackwood Properties begins here." I rolled up my sleeves alongside him. While keeping my secretarial job, I spent evenings and weekends helping Richard renovate. I learned to paint, to negotiate with contractors, to manage budgets. When we finished the renovations and filled the building with tenants, Richard insisted my name be on all the paperwork as co-owner. "We're partners in this, Eleanor. Always." By 1980, we had 6 properties and enough income for me to leave my job and work full-time with Richard. We opened a small office, hired our first employee, and I became the operations manager while Richard handled acquisitions and sales. That same year, I gave birth to our son, Michael. Balancing motherhood with our growing business wasn't easy, but Richard supported me every step of the way. I would often bring baby Michael to the office, setting up a playpen next to my desk. As our company grew, so did our family life, with Richard never missing Michael's important moments, despite our increasingly busy schedule. "The business serves the family, Eleanor, not the other way around," Richard would remind me whenever I felt guilty about dividing my attention. Through the 80s and 90s, Blackwood Properties expanded rapidly. We moved from residential properties to commercial developments, from local projects to regional investments. We weathered recessions, market fluctuations, and competition, always coming out stronger because of our partnership. Richard had the vision and charisma, while I managed the details and relationships that kept everything running smoothly. In 2005, we hit a major milestone when we acquired our first Manhattan property. Richard popped champagne in our office as we signed the papers. "We did it, Eleanor. Brooklyn to Manhattan. Next stop, the whole skyline." He wasn't exaggerating. Over the next 15 years, Blackwood Properties became one of the most respected real estate development companies in New York, with properties across the city and expanding into neighboring states. But success came with a price. 5 years ago, at 62, Richard had his first heart attack. It was a warning sign that forced him to slow down, though he never fully stepped back from the business. His doctors warned us that his heart was significantly damaged, but Richard refused to completely retire. "I'll rest when I'm dead, Eleanor," he would joke, though we both knew it wasn't really funny. As Richard's health declined, we had many late-night conversations about the future, about what would happen to me, to the company, to our legacy when he was gone. Richard was surprisingly pragmatic about it all. "I've seen what happens to widows in our circle," he said one night as we sat in our home library. "How quickly they're pushed aside, even by their own children. I won't let that happen to you, Eleanor." Without telling anyone, not even Michael, Richard had been making arrangements. He transferred ownership of several key assets directly to me, including a significant cash inheritance and our crown jewel, the newly acquired Blackwood Tower in Manhattan. He also ensured I would retain 75% controlling interest in Blackwood Properties. "Michael will have his share," Richard assured me. "But you built this empire with me, Eleanor. You deserve to control its future." Our last real conversation happened the day before he died. Richard had been feeling particularly weak, and I found him in his study looking through old photographs of us at various property openings through the years. "I'm worried about Michael and Amanda," he confessed. "Michael has a good heart, but he lets Amanda make too many decisions. And Amanda—" He trailed off, but I knew what he meant. Our daughter-in-law had shown her true colors many times over the years, though never directly enough for confrontation. "I can handle Amanda," I assured him, though I wasn't entirely confident. Richard took my hand, his grip weaker than ever before. "Promise me you'll stand your ground, Eleanor. This company is your legacy too. Don't let anyone take that from you." I promised him, not knowing I would be tested so soon. The next morning I woke to find Richard unresponsive beside me. Just like that, after 40 years together, I was alone. The grief hit me like a physical blow, but I had no time to process it before our house filled with people and I was thrust into the role of the grieving widow. As I sat in Richard's chair in our library that evening, I remembered his warning and felt a chill. Something told me to stay quiet about the inheritance, about the skyscraper, about all of it. At least for now. Michael was always a sensitive, intelligent child who grew into a thoughtful but easily influenced man. At 42, he had his father's handsome features, but lacked Richard's unwavering confidence and decisiveness. He was a solid contributor to the business, managing our commercial leasing division competently, but he never showed interest in learning the more complex aspects of development and acquisition that had built our empire. 10 years ago, Michael met Amanda during a charity gala. She was 38 now, with perfectly maintained blonde hair, a perpetual country club tan, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Back then, she managed the VIP clients at Bergdorf Goodman, helping wealthy women spend small fortunes on designer clothes. She knew how to flatter and ingratiate herself, skills she employed masterfully with Michael. "Mom, she gets me," Michael told me after their third date. "She says I've been living in Dad's shadow too long and need to make my own mark." That was my first red flag, but I kept my concerns to myself. Richard, however, was less reserved. "She's calculating," he told me privately. "Watch how she studies people before engaging with them. Nothing spontaneous about that woman." But Michael was smitten, and within 6 months they were engaged. Amanda quickly inserted herself into family matters, particularly anything involving social connections or appearances. "The Blackwood name carries weight," she would say, rearranging events I had planned or changing holiday traditions that had been in place for decades. "We need to leverage that properly." To Amanda, the Blackwood name was a brand to be monetized, not a family legacy to be honored. She constantly pushed for Michael to have a more prominent role in the company, though he had neither the experience nor the inclination for greater responsibility. Michael should be the face of Blackwood Properties, she would suggest during family dinners. No offense, Richard, but clients respond to younger leadership. Richard would smile thinly and change the subject, always keeping the peace. But I saw how these comments wounded him, especially as his health began to fail. When Amanda became pregnant with twins 4 years into their marriage, I hoped that motherhood might soften her ambitious edges. Lucy and Jake were born 8 years ago, beautiful children with Michael's kind eyes. I fell instantly in love with my grandchildren, and for a brief time Amanda seemed to welcome my involvement. That changed gradually as the twins grew older. Amanda began scheduling their activities during times she knew I had standing appointments with Richard. If I altered my schedule to attend their events, Amanda would change the times at the last minute. "Oh, we moved Jake's soccer game to yesterday," she would say with false regret. "I thought I told you. He was so disappointed you weren't there." The twins adored me despite Amanda's interference. They loved visiting our home, especially Richard's study with its wall of interesting artifacts from his global business travels. "Tell us the story of this one, Grandma," Lucy would beg, pointing to an unusual carved elephant from Thailand or a traditional mask from South Africa. These moments became increasingly rare as Amanda tightened her control over the family's social calendar. Richard noticed too. "She's isolating them from us," he observed sadly as we watched the twins being hurried to the car after an abbreviated Sunday lunch. "And Michael doesn't even realize it's happening." During Richard's final months, tensions escalated further. I caught Amanda bringing an interior designer through our home when she thought I was at the hospital with Richard. "Just gathering some ideas," she said breezily when I confronted her. "This place could use a refresh, don't you think? So much dark wood and outdated furnishings." The house had been lovingly decorated over decades, each piece selected by Richard and me to commemorate milestones in our lives together. To hear it dismissed as outdated was deeply painful. Amanda's spending also became increasingly extravagant. New jewelry designer closed memberships to exclusive clubs. I knew Michael's salary couldn't support this lifestyle, and I wondered where the money was coming from. The day before Richard died, we had a family dinner at our home. Richard was feeling stronger than he had in weeks, and the whole family gathered around our dining room table. Amanda arrived wearing a necklace I'd never seen before, an obviously expensive piece with diamonds catching the light. "Oh, this," she said when I complimented it. "Michael surprised me. Didn't you, honey?" Michael looked momentarily confused before nodding. "Right, yes. You deserve to be spoiled." Richard caught my eye across the table, a look of concern passing between us. Later, he mentioned it while we prepared for bed. "He's giving her access to his trust fund," Richard said. "The one that's supposed to be for emergencies and the twins' education." I felt a surge of anger. "Should we say something?" Richard shook his head slowly. "Not now, but make sure those documents I showed you are secure. I have a feeling things will move quickly once I'm gone." His words proved prophetic in ways I wasn't prepared for. The morning Richard died remains a blur of disjointed memories. I remember the stillness of his body beside me, how I knew before I even touched him that he was gone. The desperate call to 911, the paramedics filling our bedroom with equipment and urgent voices, the terrible finality of their sympathetic looks when they stopped resuscitation efforts. "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Blackwood," the young female paramedic said, her hand on my shoulder. "Your husband has passed." I sat beside Richard on our bed, holding his still warm hand, whispering my goodbyes and promises. There was so much to say, and suddenly no time left to say it. When I finally called Michael, his raw grief through the phone broke my heart anew. He arrived 20 minutes later, ashen-faced and stumbling. Amanda followed shortly after, her black dress and perfectly applied makeup, suggesting she had taken time to prepare for the role of grieving daughter-in-law. While Michael sat with me in shocked silence, Amanda immediately took out her phone. "I'm calling Pastor Williams about the service," she announced. "Then Riverside Chapel for arrangements. Michael, Your father's suit from the charity gala last month would be appropriate, don't you think? I wanted to scream at her to stop, to give us a moment to breathe, to grieve, but I had no energy for confrontation. As friends and family began arriving at the house, Amanda positioned herself as the de facto hostess, directing caterers. She had somehow arranged and accepting condolences as if she had been Richard's daughter rather than his daughter-in-law of 10 years. By afternoon, our family home had been transformed into what felt like an Amanda-orchestrated event. Her parents arrived from Connecticut, her sister from Boston, along with various friends I barely recognized. They moved through the house with entitled familiarity, helping themselves to Richard's prized Scotch collection and rearranging furniture to better accommodate the growing crowd. I retreated to Richard's study and closed the door, needing a moment of peace. The room smelled like him, like leather, and the sandalwood cologne he'd worn for decades. On his desk sat the fountain pen I'd given him for our 35th anniversary. Beside it, the legal pad where he'd been making notes just yesterday. I ran my fingers over his handwriting, then opened the desk drawer where he kept personal items. Inside was a small key and a handwritten note. Eleanor, remember the fishing cabin. Love always are. The fishing cabin. It was our code for a hidden wall safe behind the painting of the Adirondack Lake where we'd spent our 5th anniversary. Richard had installed it years ago when we first started acquiring significant assets. Hands trembling, I moved the painting and opened the safe. Inside was a sealed envelope with, "For Eleanor when I'm gone," written in Richard's distinctive handwriting, along with a USB drive and several small keys labeled with numbers. I tucked everything into my sweater pocket just as a knock came at the study door. Eleanor. It was Amanda. "People are asking for you. It doesn't look right, you hiding in here while everyone's gathered to honor Richard." I composed myself and opened the door. I needed a moment alone. Amanda's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, but the Hendersons just arrived, and they're major clients. Michael's too upset to speak with them coherently, so?" The implication was clear. Business came first even today. Richard would have been appalled. Throughout the afternoon, I watched Amanda direct staff to move boxes of Richard's personal items to the garage. When I questioned her, she explained they were creating space for the guests. But I noticed the boxes contained primarily photographs of Richard and me from our early years. I overheard her on the phone in the kitchen speaking in hushed tones. "Yes, the master suite. I'm thinking pale blue with white accents. How soon can your crew start? The funeral's on Friday, so perhaps Monday." She was planning to redecorate our bedroom before Richard was even buried. The worst moment came when I found my grandchildren crying in the library. Lucy and Jake had found one of the family photo albums and were looking at pictures of themselves with Richard. "We miss Grandpa," Lucy said, leaning against me as I sat between them. "I know, sweetheart. I miss him too." "Mom says we have to be strong and not cry too much," Jake confided. "She says Grandpa's business needs us to be brave." Before I could respond, Amanda appeared in the doorway. "There you are. Your cousins are here. Go say hello," she instructed the twins, who reluctantly left my side. As they passed her, she added in a stage whisper, "Remember what we talked about. Grandma is very sad, so we don't bother her with too many questions." By evening, I was emotionally exhausted. I excused myself from the impromptu dinner Amanda had arranged and went upstairs only to find staff removing items from my bedroom closet. "Mrs. Blackwood, we're just moving your things to the blue guest room," the housekeeper explained uncomfortably. "Mrs. Michael said you'd want to sleep there tonight since the master bedroom might have too many memories." I was too stunned to protest. In the hallway, I encountered Amanda's parents carrying their overnight bags toward my bedroom. "Eleanor, dear," Amanda's mother said with fake sympathy, "Amanda thought we should stay over to help with arrangements. Hope you don't mind us using the master. Amanda mentioned you'd be more comfortable in the guest room tonight." I nodded numbly and continued down the hall, passing the study where Amanda was huddled with a man I recognized as her friend who practiced law. They were reviewing documents spread across Richard's desk. "We'll need to move quickly on the title transfers," I overheard him say. before any estate complications arise. That evening at dinner, Amanda presided at the head of the table, my usual seat beside Richard's customary position. I was placed at the far end, surrounded by Amanda's friends, who spoke around me rather than to me. Michael sat in the middle, lost in grief and alcohol, barely registering the subtle power plays unfolding. After dinner, I overheard Amanda and her sister in the kitchen. "The house needs a complete overhaul," Amanda was saying. "That old woman has terrible taste. All that traditional garbage has to go." "What about Eleanor?" her sister asked. "Won't she object? Please, she's practically senile with grief. Besides, where's she going to go? She has no money of her own. Richard controlled everything. So she'll just live here with you guys awkward. Not for long. There's a really nice assisted living facility in Westchester, very exclusive. Once the will is settled, we'll suggest she might be happier there." I felt physically ill hearing them discuss my future so callously. I retreated upstairs to find more of my possessions being boxed up. When I asked the staff to stop, they apologetically explained that Mrs. Michael gave explicit instructions. Around 11 that night, exhausted and heartsick, I was sitting in the guest room when shouting erupted from downstairs. I followed the noise to find Amanda berating one of our longtime housekeepers for serving coffee in what Amanda called those ugly old cups. "Mrs. Blackwood always uses those for guests," the housekeeper defended. "Well, I'm Mrs. Blackwood now," Amanda snapped, "and I say they're trash." I cleared my throat and Amanda whirled around. "Eleanor, I thought you'd gone to bed," she said, her tone instantly changing. "Those cups were a wedding gift from Richard's grandmother," I said quietly. Something in Amanda snapped. Perhaps it was the stress of the day. Perhaps it was finally having what she thought was total control, but her carefully maintained facade crumbled. "I don't care who they're from. This is my house now, and I decide what stays and what goes," she screamed, her face contorted with rage. "Including you. You think I don't know? You've been undermining me with Michael for years, judging everything I do. Well, it's over now. Pack your bags. The old leech doesn't stay here." The room fell silent. Michael, who had entered during her tirade, stood frozen in shock. I looked at my son, waiting for him to defend me, to say something, anything. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then stared at the floor. I turned back to Amanda and said simply, "Okay." The single word seemed to surprise her more than any argument would have. She blinked momentarily, thrown off balance by my calm acceptance. Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs, aware of the stunned silence behind me. I could hear Amanda's triumphant whispers to her sister as I climbed the steps. "See, told you she'd just roll over. No backbone." Little did she know what I was thinking, as I packed a small suitcase with essentials, including Richard's hidden documents. Little did any of them know what I was about to do. The Peninsula Hotel in Midtown Manhattan had been a favorite of Richard's for business meetings. The staff knew us well, and despite the late hour, the manager himself escorted me to a suite when I arrived. "Mrs. Blackwood, we were so sorry to hear about Richard," he said as he opened the door to an elegant corner suite. "Please let us know if there's anything at all you need." For the first time in 40 years, I was truly alone. No Richard, breathing softly beside me, no familiar home surrounding me. I sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, my small suitcase still unpacked, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not the controlled tears I'd shown in front of others, but deep, racking sobs that came from the center of my being. I cried for Richard, for our lost future, for the disrespect to his memory that had occurred mere hours after his passing. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen, until exhaustion finally overtook me, and I fell asleep still wearing my clothes from the day. I woke at dawn, disoriented before remembering where I was and why. The weight of grief pressed down, but alongside it was something else, a determination that felt like Richard's voice in my head. "Stand your ground, Eleanor." After showering and changing, I opened the envelope from Richard's safe. Inside was a letter in his handwriting, detailed instructions, and several safe deposit box keys with the name of his private bank. My dearest Eleanor. The letter began. If you're reading this, I've left you to face the vultures alone. I'm sorry for that, but you're stronger than anyone knows, including perhaps yourself. It's time to show them exactly who Eleanor Blackwood really is. The letter detailed his final arrangements, including the inheritance that bypassed the family trust completely. $38 million in liquid assets transferred directly to accounts in my name, established over the past 3 years as his health declined. Full ownership of Blackwood Tower, the 50-story Manhattan skyscraper that was the crown jewel of our property portfolio, its deed transferred to me personally 6 months ago. And most significantly, his 75% controlling interest in Blackwood Properties also transferred to my name through a series of legal maneuvers his personal attorney had executed with careful discretion. Michael will receive his 25% as planned, Richard wrote. But you built this company as much as I did Eleanor. You deserve to control its future. The letter concluded with Richard's typical practical advice. Don't show your hand immediately. Observe who reveals their true character in the aftermath. Some will surprise you both positively and negatively. Trust Jonas Friedman with the legal details. He's been my personal attorney for 30 years and is separate from the company legal team. Call him first, then contact Sarah at the office. She's been loyal to us for 20 years and will help stabilize the staff. I folded the letter carefully and turned to the USB drive, which contained digital copies of all the legal documents, financial statements, property deeds, and transfer agreements. Everything perfectly organized, everything legally bulletproof. Richard had been planning this for years, anticipating exactly what might happen. My phone had been buzzing with messages all morning, most from friends offering condolences, but several increasingly agitated texts from Amanda. Where did you go? People are asking questions. Michael is upset. This is very inappropriate behavior. The funeral director needs your input. I ignored them all and called Jonas Friedman. An hour later, I was sitting in his office in a nondescript building in the financial district, away from the Blackwood Properties headquarters where we might be seen. Jonas, a balding man in his 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, had been expecting my call. Richard had briefed him thoroughly. Everything is in order, Eleanor, he assured me after we reviewed the documents. Richard was meticulous. The transfers are complete and legal. There's nothing Amanda or anyone else can do to challenge them. What about the company? I asked. Can I really run it? Jonas smiled. You already have been in many ways. Richard told me years ago that while he was the visionary, you were the executor, the one who made things happen. He believed in you completely. My next call was to Sarah Johnson, the company's operations director, and my friend for over 2 decades. Her relief at hearing from me was palpable. Eleanor, thank God. The office is in chaos. No one knows what's happening. Amanda called this morning demanding access to Richard's files and office. I stalled her, but she's threatening to have Michael fire me. She can't fire anyone, I assured her, and neither can Michael without board approval. Tell everyone I'll be in touch soon. Throughout the day, I made discreet calls to key business partners and board members, not revealing my full position yet, but assuring them of continuity and stability. The responses were telling. Most expressed relief at hearing from me, a few seemed cautious, clearly having already been contacted by Amanda or Michael. I also called my longtime friend Barbara, a retired executive who had navigated her own difficult transition after her husband's death. I need your brutally honest opinion. I told her over lunch at a quiet restaurant far from our usual haunts. Am I capable of running Blackwood Properties? Barbara didn't hesitate. More capable than Richard in some ways. He was the dreamer, Eleanor. You were the builder. Everyone in business circles knows that. Then why does Amanda think I'm just a decorative appendage, a senile old woman to be shuffled off to assisted living? Barbara's eyes widened at this revelation, then narrowed in anger. Because that's what would serve her purposes. Have you looked into her background thoroughly? Because people like that usually have patterns. I hadn't, and Barbara's suggestion led me to hire a private investigator that afternoon. The preliminary report he delivered that evening was illuminating. Before Michael, Amanda had been briefly engaged to another wealthy man from a prominent family. That relationship ended abruptly amid rumors of financial impropriety. She had also been sued by a former employer for unauthorized use of client information. The picture emerging confirmed Richard's instincts about her. Amanda wasn't just opportunistic, she was potentially dangerous to the company and to Michael's future. As I sat in my hotel suite that evening, surrounded by documents and making notes, I realized something important. This wasn't just about defending my position or asserting my rights. It was about protecting Richard's legacy, the company we had built together, and ultimately Michael and my grandchildren's future. I wasn't fighting against Amanda out of bitterness or revenge. I was fighting for everything Richard and I had created, for the values our company represented, for the employees who depended on Blackwood Properties for their livelihoods. With that clarity, I began formulating my plan, not an emotional reaction, but a strategic response. Richard had given me all the legal tools I needed. Now I had to find the personal strength to use them effectively. I called down to the hotel concierge and made appointments at the most exclusive salon and boutique in the city for the following morning. If I was going to reclaim my position, I needed to look the part of the confident company leader, not the grieving widow Amanda expected me to be. The next morning, as I prepared for what would be the most challenging day of my professional life, I took out the small framed photo of Richard I'd grabbed from my nightstand before leaving our home. It was from our 30th anniversary trip to Italy, Richard laughing beside me on a Venetian gondola. "I won't let you down," I promised him and myself. A week after Richard's funeral, which I attended with quiet dignity, seated beside Michael in the front row, while Amanda managed to make herself the center of attention with dramatic displays of grief, I was ready to make my move. The funeral had been a solemn affair, though Amanda had turned it into what felt more like a networking event, introducing Michael to important contacts, even during the reception afterward. Through it all, I maintained a dignified presence, accepting condolences with genuine gratitude, while avoiding direct confrontation with Amanda. Michael had called several times awkwardly, asking when I might come home, but never directly addressing Amanda's behavior or apologizing for his failure to defend me. "I'm taking some time to process Michael," was my consistent response. "We'll talk soon." Behind the scenes, I was preparing methodically. My transformation started with my appearance. Gone was the soft traditional styling I'd maintained for years. The salon gave me a sleek, sophisticated cut that framed my face beautifully and eliminated the slightly outdated look I'd grown comfortable with. The boutique stylist helped me select a wardrobe of elegant, powerful pieces that communicated authority while remaining age-appropriate. "You have amazing bone structure," the stylist had commented. "We should highlight that with stronger silhouettes." The woman who looked back at me from the mirror was someone I recognized from long ago. The young Eleanor who had sat beside Richard in tough negotiations, who had managed construction crews and bankers with equal confidence. Somewhere along the way, I had allowed myself to fade into the background. Not anymore. I arrived at Blackwood Properties headquarters at precisely 9:30 that morning, timing my entrance to coincide with the daily management meeting Richard had instituted years ago. Sarah had confirmed the meeting was still happening now, with Michael nominally at the helm, but Amanda increasingly present and vocal. The security guard in the lobby did a double take when I walked in, then broke into a broad smile. "Mrs. Blackwood, so good to see you back, ma'am." I took the private elevator to the executive floor, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. As the doors opened, I heard gasps from the reception staff, followed by genuine exclamations of welcome. "Blackwood! Eleanor, you're back! Thank goodness you're here." I smiled warmly at each of them, noting who seemed genuinely pleased versus merely polite. Our receptionist, Marlene, who had been with us for 15 years, came around her desk to hug me. "The meeting just started," she whispered, "in the main conference room." I nodded my thanks and walked down the hallway, aware of eyes following me, whispers trailing behind. I paused outside the conference room door, took a deep breath, and pushed it open. The room fell silent mid-sentence. Around the large table sat our executive team, some looking surprised, others relieved. At the head of the table in Richard's chair sat Michael. Beside him, in what had been my chair, sat Amanda, despite having no official role in the company. "Eleanor?" Michael stood awkwardly. "We weren't expecting you today." "Clearly," I replied, my voice steady. "But this is still Blackwood Properties, and I am still a Blackwood." Amanda recovered quickly, her surprise morphing into a tight smile. "Eleanor, how nice of you to visit. We were just discussing transitional strategies. Michael has some exciting new directions planned." "I'm not visiting Amanda," I said, moving to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table. "Sarah, would you please distribute the documents you have in your folder?" Sarah, looking nervous but determined, opened a folder and began passing out stapled packets to everyone at the table. "What is this?" Michael asked, looking down at the papers. "Documentation of ownership and control of Blackwood Properties," I explained calmly. "As you'll see on page 1, Richard transferred his 75% controlling interest in the company to me prior to his death. The transfer is complete and legally binding." The room erupted in murmurs. Amanda snatched the document from Michael's hands, her eyes scanning it frantically. "This can't be legal," she snapped. "Richard would never do this. He always intended Michael to take over. Michael has his 25% interest, as always planned." I continued addressing the room rather than Amanda directly. "He remains an important part of this company's future, but operational control rests with me as majority shareholder." "Mom," Michael finally found his voice, "why didn't you tell me about this?" "For the same reason your father kept it confidential, Michael. He wanted to see how events unfolded naturally after his passing, to see who would reveal their true character." Amanda's face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. You're a grieving widow making irrational decisions. Michael, call our lawyer immediately." "By all means," I replied before Michael could speak. "Though I should mention that Jonas Friedman, your father's personal attorney for 30 years, has verified all documentation. The company lawyers report to the board, which I now control." I turned to our CFO, Thomas, who had always been fair and straightforward. "Thomas, please confirm for everyone that these documents match the official company records." Thomas adjusted his glasses nervously. "I received notification of the ownership transfer last week from legal. These documents appear to be in order." Amanda stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is a hostile takeover, your own son's birthright. Michael has exactly the birthright his father intended," I said calmly. "A significant ownership stake and a key executive role. What he doesn't have is his wife making decisions she has no authority to make." I turned to the rest of the team. "I understand Amanda has been contacting many of you with directives and requests for information. To be clear, Amanda has no official position with Blackwood Properties and no authority to access confidential company information or issue instructions to staff." The tension in the room was palpable. Several executives looked uncomfortable but nodded in acknowledgement. "Mom," Michael's voice had a pleading quality, "can we discuss this privately as a family?" "Of course," I agreed. "But first, I want to assure everyone that Blackwood Properties will continue operating according to the principles and vision Richard established. There will be no radical changes or departures from our core values." This statement visibly relieved many around the table. Richard had been respected and well-liked throughout the company. "Now, if you'll excuse us, my son is right that we have family matters to discuss. Sarah will coordinate with each of you later today to schedule individual meetings so I can get up to speed on all current projects." As the executives filed out, some squeezing my shoulder supportively as they passed, I remained seated, maintaining my position of authority. When the door closed behind the last person leaving just Michael, Amanda, and me, the real confrontation began. Amanda didn't bother with pretense anymore. "You sneaky, manipulative old woman, you've been plotting this all along." "No, Amanda. Richard was the planner. I'm just executing his wishes. Dad would never cut me out like this." Michael insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. He didn't cut you out, Michael. He preserved your place while protecting the company he built, the company we built together. This is about you being unable to let go, Amanda hissed. You can't stand that it's Michael's turn to lead to modernize this dinosaur of a company and bring it into the present. I regarded her coolly. Is that what you told the Henderson Group last week, when you met with them to discuss selling our West Side development at below market value? Amanda froze and Michael turned to her in confusion. What meeting with the Hendersons? I had taken a calculated risk with this allegation based on a suspicious comment from Thomas earlier in the week about unusual interest in that property. Amanda's reaction confirmed my suspicions. They reached out to me, Amanda said defensively. It was just a preliminary discussion. You have no authority to discuss selling company assets, I stated firmly. And I have to wonder why our competitors would reach out to you rather than to Michael or our acquisitions team. Michael was looking increasingly troubled. Amanda, you said that dinner was with your college friends. I pressed my advantage. Just as she said the interior designers in our home the day Richard died were just gathering ideas, or that the moving of my possessions to the guest room was for my comfort rather than to install her parents in our bedroom. Michael looked stricken. Is that true? Amanda switched tactics, tears suddenly filling her eyes. I was just trying to help. Everything was so chaotic, and Eleanor was so overwhelmed with grief. Someone had to take charge. Taking charge is one thing, I replied. Taking over is another, particularly when it involves planning to ship me off to an assisted living facility in Westchester. What? Michael turned to Amanda in shock. She's making that up, Amanda insisted. She's turning you against me just like she always has. I stood gathering my documents. I think we all need time to process this new reality. Michael, I suggest you review these documents carefully with independent legal counsel, not Amanda's friends, and then we should talk just the two of us. You can't just waltz in here and take over, Amanda sputtered, her composure cracking further. I'm not taking over, Amanda. I'm reclaiming what was always mine. I moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing you should both know. Blackwood Tower, our Manhattan skyscraper, is legally in my name personally, not the company's. Richard transferred ownership to me 6 months ago. The shock on both their faces was profound. The skyscraper was worth hundreds of millions, the most prestigious property in our portfolio. That's impossible, Amanda whispered. Check the property records, I suggested. They're public information. As I opened the door to leave, I turned back to Michael. I'm staying at the Peninsula for now. When you're ready to talk without Amanda present, call me. I walked out with my head high, feeling Richard's presence beside me like a supporting hand at my elbow. In the outer office, several staff members were pretending to work while obviously waiting to see the outcome. I smiled at them reassuringly. Business as usual, I announced. Sarah, please come to my office in 10 minutes to begin briefings. As I walked toward Richard's office, now mine, I heard quick footsteps behind me. It was Michael, looking distraught. Mom, wait, he called, catching up to me in the hallway. This isn't right. We need to work this out as a family. I turned to face him. We will, Michael. But first you need to understand what's been happening while you've been distracted by grief. Come by the hotel tonight at 7, alone. We'll talk then. The confusion and conflict on his face tugged at my heart. He was still my son, still the little boy Richard and I had raised together. But he was also a grown man who needed to see the truth about the woman he had married. I love you, Michael, I said softly. That hasn't changed and never will. But this company was your father's legacy, built through 40 years of hard work and integrity. I won't let anyone dismantle that legacy, not even you. He nodded slowly, uncertainty in his eyes, but perhaps also the beginning of understanding. As I continued to Richard's office and sat behind his desk, now my desk, I felt a strange mixture of grief and determination. Richard was gone, but the foundation we had built together remained strong. It was up to me now to protect it, preserve it, and eventually pass it on to those who would honor its values. I opened the center drawer, smiling sadly at Richard's collection of fountain pens, arranged precisely as he'd left them. Below them was a small framed photo of us on the day we bought our first property, young and determined and full of dreams. "First step taken," I whispered to his image, "just as you knew I could." The 3 months following Richard's death were transformative in ways I never could have imagined. After my dramatic return to Blackwood Properties, things moved swiftly. I established myself in a stunning penthouse apartment at the top of Blackwood Tower, my skyscraper. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, least of all Amanda. I was literally above her machinations, looking down on the city Richard and I had helped shape. The penthouse had been designed as a corporate entertainment space, but had a private residential section Richard had included for future considerations. It seemed he had been planning my eventual move there for some time. The views of Manhattan were breathtaking, especially at sunset when the whole city glowed golden. My grandchildren were enchanted the first time they visited, running from window to window, exclaiming over landmarks they recognized. "You live in the sky, Grandma," Jake had exclaimed. "It's like a castle in the clouds." "Can we see our house from here?" Lucy asked, pressing her nose against the glass. "Almost," I told her, pointing toward the general direction of their home in Westchester. "But more importantly, we can see the future from here." I established regular visits with the twins, picking them up from school once a week for adventures with Grandma. That included museums, parks, and often just baking cookies in my sky-high kitchen. Amanda initially tried to interfere, but eventually relented when Michael insisted. It was one of the first times he had firmly stood up to her, a promising sign. My relationship with Michael evolved gradually after our conversation at the hotel the night of my return to the company. I had shown him evidence of Amanda's deception, including records of unauthorized access to company files and documented meetings with competitors. "Your father warned me this might happen," I told him gently. "Not because he didn't trust you, but because he knew how easily manipulated you can be by those you care about." Michael had been defensive at first, then angry, then finally reflective. "I've been blind," he admitted. "She kept telling me I needed to assert myself to step out of Dad's shadow. I thought she believed in me." "She believes in what you represent, Michael. Access to wealth and status. It's not the same thing as believing in you." That conversation began a healing process between us. Michael started accompanying me to key business meetings, genuinely learning the aspects of the company he had previously avoided. I could see Richard's potential in him when he was free from Amanda's influence. At Blackwood Properties, I implemented structural changes that solidified my control while rewarding loyal employees. Sarah was promoted to Chief Operating Officer, a position she more than deserved. Thomas remained as CFO, his initial nervousness replaced by renewed commitment when he saw I valued his financial conservatism as Richard had. Amanda predictably did not accept the new reality without a fight. 2 weeks after my return, she had her lawyer friend file a challenge to Richard's will, claiming undue influence and diminished capacity. Jonas Friedman calmly presented the extensive medical documentation Richard had preemptively secured, confirming his mental competence at the time of all transfers. "Richard anticipated every move," Jonas told me, as we reviewed the quickly dismissed legal challenge. "He knew exactly who he was dealing with." Amanda's next strategy was to pressure Michael to contest the arrangements, arguing that as Richard's son, he had been unfairly marginalized. To his credit, Michael refused. "Dad knew what he was doing," he told her during an argument I overheard when visiting their home to see the twins. "Mom built this company with him. She deserves to lead it." That argument marked a turning point in their relationship. Michael began noticing other manipulations, questioning Amanda's spending and her attempts to isolate him from long-standing friends. He started reviewing their finances, discovering alarming discrepancies Amanda couldn't adequately explain. I established trust funds for Lucy and Jake that Amanda couldn't access, ensuring their education and future security regardless of what happened between their parents. The trusts were structured to provide for the children while encouraging work ethic and responsibility values Richard and I had always emphasized. Beyond family matters, I found unexpected fulfillment in actively leading Blackwood Properties. Decisions I had previously influenced behind the scenes, I now made directly. Staff who had known me for years but had interacted primarily with Richard now sought my guidance and approval. I established the Richard Blackwood Foundation, dedicating a portion of company profits to affordable housing initiatives and community development in underserved neighborhoods. It was work Richard had always wanted to do, but had postponed in favor of growing the business. This would make him proud, Michael said when I presented the foundation plans to the board, using our success to help others build their own futures. 3 months after Richard's death, during a routine Sunday visit with my grandchildren, Michael asked to speak with me privately while the twins played in the garden. Amanda moved out yesterday, he said, looking both sad and relieved. I filed for divorce. I took his hand but said nothing, letting him continue at his own pace. You were right about her, he admitted. She's been transferring money to private accounts for years. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it. She said it was insurance in case things didn't work out. I'm sorry, Michael. Truly. And I was. Despite everything, I had never wanted my son to experience this pain. I should have listened to you and Dad years ago, he said, but I was so determined to make my own choices even when they were wrong. That's part of growing up, I told him, even at 42. He managed a small smile at that. The kids are confused, but I think they'll be okay. They adore you, you know. Lucy told Amanda last week that she wants to be like Grandma when she grows up running a big company from the top of a skyscraper. My heart swelled at this. Perhaps Richard's legacy would extend even further than we had imagined. In the months that followed, Michael and I established a new working relationship at Blackwood Properties. He took on greater responsibilities, now genuinely interested in learning the business from the ground up, rather than expecting leadership as an entitlement. I began mentoring several promising young executives, including 2 women who reminded me of myself at their age. Amanda's divorce demands were predictably excessive, but with the prenuptial agreement Richard had insisted upon and evidence of her financial misconduct, the settlement was fair rather than extravagant. She moved to Los Angeles shortly after apparently pursuing a new wealthy target. My grief for Richard remained a constant companion, but no longer a crushing weight. I felt him with me in board meetings, in conversations with Michael, in quiet evenings, watching the city lights from my penthouse windows. I had loved him for 40 years and would love him for the rest of my life. But I was also discovering parts of myself that had been dormant strengths I hadn't fully recognized. One evening, about 6 months after Richard's death, I hosted a dinner for my closest friends in my penthouse. Barbara raised her glass in a toast. To Eleanor Blackwood, she said, who showed us all that the third act can be the most powerful. Later, as we stood looking out over the glittering city, Barbara asked if I had any regrets about how events had unfolded. Only that Richard isn't here to see it, I replied honestly. But in a way, he orchestrated all of this. He knew what Amanda would do, how Michael would initially react, how I would need to respond. He gave me the tools, but trusted me to find the strength to use them. He always saw the real you, Barbara observed, even when others didn't, even perhaps when you didn't. That night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone with a glass of Richard's favorite bourbon, contemplating the journey of the past 6 months, from the devastated widow being ejected from her own home to the confident business leader ensuring her family's legacy, from silence about my inheritance to purposeful use of the resources Richard had entrusted to me. The true wealth I realized wasn't the money or the properties or even the company itself. It was the confidence Richard had placed in me, the belief that I could carry forward what we had built together. That quiet faith had been his greatest gift. I thought of Amanda's cruel words the night Richard died, calling me an old leech. How little she had understood about true partnership, about building something together over decades, about the strength that comes from supporting each other through life's challenges. My phone chimed with a text from Michael. The twins want to have breakfast with Grandma in her sky castle tomorrow. Okay. I smiled and typed back, always room in the castle for them. 9 a.m. Pancakes will be waiting. Looking out at the city Richard and I had helped build property by property, deal by deal, I felt a profound sense of peace. This wasn't the life I had expected at 67, but it was a life rich with purpose and possibility. A life honoring the past while embracing the future. Life had taken an unexpected turn, but I had learned that sometimes the most painful endings can lead to the most powerful beginnings. That standing your ground doesn't mean standing still, and that the greatest revenge against those who underestimate you isn't anger or bitterness, but success and grace. And I think Richard would be proud of that lesson most of all. I wonder if any of you have ever been underestimated or faced a situation where you had to stand up for yourself unexpectedly. Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found something valuable in my story, please hit that subscribe button and like this video so others might find it too. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power and rewrite your story. Thank you for listening, and until next time, this is Eleanor Blackwood signing off from the top of my skyscraper.